Hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. I have heard about Withnail I for a long, long time. It's one of those strange films whose name is sort of constantly referred to in sort of British film circles, and yet it's the kind of film which you think, I have no real desire to watch. There's no real sort of, it's not considered a grand classic of British comedy, but, well, is it though? Producer wife Helen? Is it? It's considered, remarkable. People, remembered, but it's not held with great esteem. And yet, it's sort of that perfect storm of all these elements of things, and particularly to do with performances and actors, and the style that really makes it stand out in that particular time and place in British cinema. The fact that it was Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann's first feature film. The fact that there is something about it that is both ludicrous, that sort of subtle comedy aspect rather than being over the top, and yet at the same time melancholic. There's this, I don't know, it's a curious film because as you watch it, you're not sure whether you're supposed to be laughing or supposed to be sort of horrified or slightly haunted even by sections of it. And at the same time, there is that sense that it's a film that's almost about nothing. Like, if you, on a superficial level, watch it, you do have that sort of feeling of like, okay, what exactly happened? Two guys are having a bad time in London, go on a quick holiday where they meet strange and kooky characters, but nothing really happens to them. They return, and then their friendship comes, that particular period of their lives comes to an end. But again, it is a film where not a great deal happens in between. It's not, a film where they learn a great lesson or, events build to a great sort of crescendo. It's rather subtle, really, when you think about it, in respect of what exactly is being said, if anything at all. And as I say, the beauty of it is the fact that it is just a character piece, and the fact that Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann, it gives them an excuse to simply act around each other and almost sort of experiment with their performance styles, and sort of riff off each other in a way that works so well and has such a sort of, the chemistry between them really makes you think of two people who genuinely, are fond of each other and yet are almost destructive for each other. It's funny, really, with Richard E. Grant, of course, he's playing this sort of alcoholic, self-destructive character who seems to be full of melancholy and yet at the same time spiraling in a way that sort of draws everyone in around him in this sort of self-destructive path. And it sort of reminds me, if you're sort of looking more broadly at sort of career, it's funny because the film that I believe was the most recent film I've seen him in was Can You Ever Forgive Me? Where again he plays a self-destructive narcissist who's spiraling and yet at the same time is sort of melancholy and slightly withdrawn. And it's funny because you could almost believe that it's the same character to some degree. It's not, by no means the same character, but there is that sense of continuity that you could believe that it was the character from Withnail I journeying all the way to being the character from Can You Ever Forgive Me? And when I say there's no real arc or sort of lesson learned, the thing I noted as I was watching is the Paul McGann character, the and I character, or was it Marbrook or Marwood? Marwood is the fact that, of course, throughout the film is never referred to by name, because I think on some perspective, perhaps for Bruce Robinson, this is his own story, that he is Paul McGann's character. I don't know that, but the fact that there is that sense of almost perspective from him, you get the sense that there is a subtextual arc or a thematic arc with Paul McGann's character where, he's so neurotic and anxious and troubled when he's in London, and in the climate that he's living in and the environment he's living in only seems to do him further damage. And then when he goes to the country, there is this sense that he sort of gains more confidence, more a stronger sense of self. There is some stuff that doesn't, unfortunately, age particularly well, and I'll get onto that. But he doesn't seem to be as neurotic and anxiety-ridden as he does in the first section of the film. The funny thing being that when he goes back to London, all those neuroses, anxieties, that sense of someone on the cusp of a breakdown comes back, and I don't know what's entirely being said about that, whether the relationship of Withnail and I and Mark, and whether do you get that sense of, perhaps when they're in an environment where neither of them can control things, that's where the dynamic shifts, because you do get that strange sense of power play between them, of who is in control, who has the greater status, one in the city, one in the country. And of course money and wealth also plays into it. It's funny because I was thinking, as I was watching this, about the film, or the film adaptation of the musical Rent, and the conversations I had about it, where there are many things about Rent I like, but one of the big things that I don't like is the lead. And I struggle with that sense of elective bohemian lifestyle, the sort of sense of, a group of characters who, are living this sort of freedom from society, and yet at the same time there is that sense of mooching. There's particularly that restaurant scene that I find quite frustrating. And of course with some of the characters, particularly the LGBTQIA plus characters and the ones who are suffering from AIDS, you get that sense that, okay, they are on the outskirts of society because that is the only place that will accept them. They are bohemian by necessity. But then you have a character like Mark, and the big criticism I had of Mark is the fact that he seems to choose this, and he seems to have that sort of pretentious, obnoxious sense of self and self-importance, and how he is an artist before anything else. And it's really hard to sort of consider that, because if I'm criticising one, it feels like I'm criticising the other. And yet watching this is, I suppose, the perspective I was thinking about. The idea of these people who, the bohemian lifestyle is not this great artistic expression of, freedom and revolution without sort of tearing down walls. The version of that it feels like I perceive is the one you get from Withnail and I. These people who are they don't really know what to do with their freedom, with their sort of this lifestyle that they live. They just seem to exist in it, and it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't express anything. And on some level, they want to find the way out of it, which is why, of course, they're desperate. They are both actors, and they are desperate to be cast, and yet they're sort of stuck. And if there's anything to it that I feel like there is that sense of, the way I was sort of reading it was that sense of the party is coming to an end feeling, and there is that melancholic sense of they know that this is over, this period of their life is over, and it does have that sense of coming of age for people who should have came of age a long time ago. Particularly towards the end of the film, you get that strange sense of, characters who, they are the last people in the party when the party has well since passed for everyone else, and in their trying to continue to party, they end up being more chaotic and self-destructive than anything else. And that is interesting, and it does make sense in the time in which the film was made, so that late 80s, it sort of fits in with sort of the young ones type of storytelling. Even though, of course, it's set in the 60s, but again, it obviously as sort of a reflective piece by the writer-director, it makes sense that that's where he's referring back to. There is the troubling issue of sort of homophobia within the text that I was really hoping, as it was going on, would subvert itself or find a way to sort of allow the other shoe to drop. Unfortunately, it doesn't. It simply is a very prototypical type of, two young lads who, for plot reasons, are having to sort of interact with a incredibly flamboyant gay character and are threatened by his sexuality and are concerned about molestation. I don't love that. I don't think it's a particularly, from 2021, it is not a particularly good stance, because it's one thing if, say, characters within a narrative are homophobic, but the narrative itself justifies their concerns and fears because his character, Richard Griffith's character, is everything that they're concerned that he is sort of sexually predatory, and it's unfortunate because it doesn't age. It is the part of the film that doesn't age well. But yeah, it's a curious film. It's definitely one that you sort of chew over, and there are some very funny moments, like the tea shop moment, like the bits where they're talking to their friend and they're getting incredibly stoned, and again, Richard E. Grant and Paul McGann take it in their stride, the humour and the style of it. But yeah, it's unusual. It's an unusual film. And it's definitely one I'll be sort of thinking on and would definitely be worth a rewatch at some point. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because this will help with the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out the back catalogue of over 250 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films when I'm not tweeting about these videos, when they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.